What's up, NFL fans? Welcome to another episode of Four Down Territory. I'm your host, Luke Easterling, as always, joined by Doug Farrar from Touchdown Wire. Four remain, Doug. Four teams are left in the chase for the Lombardi Trophy this year after a divisional round that gave us a couple of blowouts, but we got some entertainment with a couple of nail-biters there with the four games we had this weekend. Let's dive right into it, right? Let's talk about America's team, the Cowboys. Obviously, all kinds of questions after that 19-15 loss to the 49ers in their divisional game on the road. Defensive coordinator Dan Quinn's going to have his share of head coach interviews. Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, might get his own. It's going to be Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy, it seems like, at least for better or worse moving forward, right? The real question is now, outside of the coaches, Dak Prescott, right? I mean, raised his season total of interceptions to 17 if you include the postseason, coming off that great performance against the Buccaneers. But then you have this loss with a couple of really head-scratching interceptions again against San Francisco. Let's get into the financials, right? His 2023 cap hit, Prescott, 49.1300, however many, but basically a $50 million cap hit, right?
A lot of zeros, Luke.
A lot of zeros. 4 years, $160 million was the contract from 2021, $126 million in guarantees. Seemed like a good deal at the time, right, for quarterback money. And the intercept, it's not just the interceptions, right? Because it's the type of interceptions we're seeing. It's the same types of things over and over again. The picks we saw on Sunday were similar to ones we saw against the Colts and the Jaguars earlier in the regular season. I mean, are the Cowboys now stuck with an unsolvable problem at quarterback? And again, being the most important positions, that's a pretty big problem. Or is this something Dak can pull himself out of in 2023 as the Cowboys look to move forward and hopefully go further next year?
Well, the good news for the Cowboys is that Dak Prescott's cap hit for 2023 is not the biggest cap hit for any quarterback. The biggest cap hit for any quarterback is Deshaun Watson at about $55 million. So there you go. It could be worse, folks. It could be worse. Look, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I've been writing about Prescott for a while. And there are times when he's still a great quarterback. The Buccaneers defense was absent without leave in that wildcard game, but his performance was marvelous. He saw the field well. He took advantage of defensive lapses when they were there, which was most of the time. And he put his team on his shoulders, which is what you expect a quarterback of that alleged caliber to do.
Right.
But when we're talking about last week, we both wondered what it would look like. We were talking about Prescott last week, right? Dak is back. Is he back? And we both said, let's see what happens against DeMeco Ryans' defense. And we obviously saw that. When you're facing a team that is a linebacker and Fred Warner who can run with CeeDee Lamb, your best receiver, from the line of scrimmage up the seam 30 yards downfield, I mean, Fred Warner is an alien. There's not much you can do.
Right, special player. Yeah.
Good Lord. But Prescott has not been great much of the season. And the problem here is, and I wrote about this yesterday, this being Monday, he has established serial mistakes that keep happening. One thing that happens that I've noticed with quarterbacks who throw a lot of interceptions is they tend to be bunched in types. And the first quarter pick to cornerback Diamador Lenoir was the same kind of backside stop route that Dak missed to Michael Gallup, same receiver, in Week 13 against the Colts. Stephon Gilmore got that one, jumped it, pretty much the same way. The second quarter pick to Fred Warner, who was that play was the ball was tipped by Jimmy Ward, who made a great play, was very much like the worm burner he threw to Noah Brown against the Jaguars in Week 15. It was, I'm going to try and throw the ball low against converging coverage. In that case, it wasn't a defender who tipped the ball to the interceptor. It was Brown himself who tipped it to Rayshon Jenkins, who ran it back for a game-winning overtime touchdown. Prescott needs more weapons. Yes, he could probably use a better head coach, putting it mildly. But this season, Prescott has not been the kind of quarterback you win because of. You can win him with him. Do you win because of him? And that's that sort of important delineation as we talk about quarterbacks a lot in this episode. Is he that guy? And I would say that after this season, the answer is decidedly no. In that context, the money is problematic.
Right. I think really it just comes down to consistency, right? I mean, if you're going to have something at quarterback you don't want, it's inconsistency. That's the killer. And to have it at the game's most important position, when the stakes get this high, this is what can happen, right? If you can't count on what type of quarterback performance you're going to get, this is what you're left with. You're left going home in the playoffs. So I think, like you said, when the only things you're doing consistently are throwing the same types of interceptions that we saw in the regular season that we're seeing in the playoffs, I mean, we've seen plenty of moments where Dak looks like the guy, right? The elite franchise quarterback. He's rolling out. He's working within the offense. He's making defenses pay when they make mistakes. He's challenging them with his legs and with his arm, and he's doing all the right things. We've seen those moments, but I feel like it's been just as often that we've seen the head scratching moments and the throws that make no sense and missing reads and making the turnovers in the clutch moments when you just can't have them. I feel like, again, especially in the big games, that's where that legacy gets cemented. Can you consistently be the guy we saw against Tampa Bay against good defenses, as the stakes get higher and you move further along in the postseason? And again, unfortunately, and this I hate this because I love Dak Prescott. I want him to succeed. I love to see him do well. And when you see the flashes, you're like, that's the guy he can be. But when you don't see it all the time and when you have these types of performances in big games, it does make that cap number look bigger and bigger as they look forward. Speaking of teams with some big questions to answer this offseason after getting bounced from the second round of the playoffs, let's talk about the Bills, right? Heartbreaker in the snow in Buffalo in front of a crowd that obviously was hoping for a much better result. They lose 27-10 at home to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I mean, the big problem obviously is on the offensive side of the ball, even though the defense really didn't do much to help them against Burrow. But if you look at the offense, the Bills couldn't get anything going against the Bengals in this game. They, as usual, relied on Josh Allen way too much, and it wasn't enough. I mean, there's no doubt this team is overall a good team, right? You don't go to the playoffs 4 years in a row without being a good team. But is it time to start wondering if the Bills' window is actually starting to close before it ever really opened to the degree that they could actually get to and win a Super Bowl?
Well, you look at what Joe Burrow said after the game. And he said, given those conditions, we knew we needed to run the ball. And they were down 3 offensive linemen, and Ted Karras, the center, got hurt in game. So basically, they were down.
All we heard about all week, right?
And they came in there, and they smacked the Bills in the mouth over and over. There was one mix and run play, the one where he rolled right and ran over Jordan Poyer. I posted a picture on Twitter. I took a screen cap of the game. They had 3 perfect seal blocks to the right side. These are guys who have not worked together well. And, we can talk about Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, get all these weapons. And obviously Burrow is great. But the Bengals have built their team to be a complete team. They don't have a lot of quote-unquote stars on defense, but look at how the defense goes. Mm-hmm. The Bills have made it very clear their path to the Super Bowl in their minds was to put everything on Josh Allen offensively, rely equally on great defense, and hope the offensive issues are minimized by Allen's freaky greatness. But anytime, this, Luke, anytime you are that dependent on one player, you will get in trouble at some point, and it will usually be in the playoffs. And the Bills, for all the great things they did in the 2022 season, have been in trouble a lot. They have been notoriously boom or bust all season. You look at similar teams who suffered these kinds of losses in the playoffs. The Chiefs got rickrolled by your Buccaneers in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They have since redefined their entire offense over the 2 subsequent seasons. They traded Tyreek Hill. They replaced all 5 of their offensive linemen. I mean, people just don't do this. Right. And the Bengals couldn't quite match up with the Rams in last year's Super Bowl, and they got 3 new offensive linemen in the offseason, none of whom played in this game except for Karras. To mix with the weapons they already had. The Bills need a similar line redesign. They need a top-tier running back on whom Allen can rely, not a group of second-tier guys who kind of disappear. It's the whole stars and scrubs thing. They need more than Stephon Diggs at receiver. You can't just rely on playoff Gabe Davis, who may or may not show up. Right. Problem is they pushed a lot of their contracts forward because they thought this was their year. They're more than $8 million over the projected 2023 cap of $225 million. And there aren't a lot of cuttable contracts. It's not like, this guy stinks and he made $30 million and his dead cap is $5, so we can just, clear the decks. Right. They can't do that. So it will have to come down to the draft. And the hope that the new broadcast deals widen the margin for error. We'll find out what the cap is in the new league year. But right now, it seems to me that the Bills are kind of stuck.
Yeah, I mean, that game was painful to watch, right? If you're a Bills fan and you look at it at some point, you're like, okay, this is where the comeback starts. This is where they make a play. And it just never materialized, right? Outside of that one late touchdown drive. But, I mean, again, it was clear from the start, Burrow and the offense had no answers for whatever the Bengals were throwing at them. I mean, contrast that with the way Joe Burrow, super chill dominance, right? Just out there for an afternoon stroll through the pouring snow in Buffalo, acted like he had not a care in the world, and he's just
staying in the park on a Sunday. Why not? That's fun.
Literally. I mean, like you said, this offense is so critical for the Bills, not just in terms of personnel, but what what scheme and philosophy tweaks are they going to be able to make and maybe willing to make to avoid wasting, like you said, what's left of this window? I mean, there's a lot that needs to change. You look at some of the moves they made. They bring in Nyheim Hines. They spend a second-round pick on James Cook trying to address that running back position. It really never made an impact. I mean, they really have to hit big, like you said, on those rookies because they're not going to have much money to spend on anybody else. So they're going to have to hit there. And it's going to be about, again, scheme and coaching, what philosophical changes they're going to be able to make the most of the talent they do already have. Because I don't know how many changes personnel-wise they're going to be able to make to be able to afford to make.
4 words for this week: mock draft Bijan Robinson. I'm just saying.
If he makes it that far,
yeah.
I mean that's a long way to go.
Well, this mock is going to be weird.
Not going to tell you yet how high he's going to end up on the overall board. I know that's a different conversation, but he is going to be very, very high. Doesn't mean he won't fly that far.
Will do that, yeah.
Yeah, nobody likes running backs. I get it. He's going to last a while, but man, he's a talented prospect to say the least.
He'd look good in that offense. So would Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, by the way.
Yes, he would. Let's talk about, I mean, we talked about quarterbacks this whole time, right? Let's stay on it. Let's talk about the guys who are still in the playoffs, right? Of the 4 quarterbacks who are left in the tournament at this point, Jalen Hurts in Philly, Brock Purdy in San Francisco, Mahomes obviously in Kansas City, and Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Which would you most want to tie your postseason fortunes to, right? If you were fortunate to be able to pick any of the 4, and just to make it fair, let's assume Patrick Mahomes is fully healthy, right? Which I don't expect him to be for this game. But assuming that he was, which of these 4 guys are you feeling most comfortable riding with into the postseason?
Luke, I think the clear answer is Brock Purdy. No, just kidding. And the thing about Mahomes, by the way, he demolished people in the pocket this year. He had 33 touchdowns from the pocket, which was the most in the NFL. Second was Burrow, by the way. So just because he can't move doesn't mean he can't.
He doesn't have Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, whatever.
It's over.
Yeah, it's over. Wow. You turned into Rob Halford there. I'll say 2 things that don't seem to go together in all seriousness. Patrick Mahomes is the 2022 season's NFL MVP, and I would absolutely want Joe Burrow to be my quarterback among those choices were it my decision. We all know how Mahomes creates explosive potential that other quarterbacks just can't. And I don't want to minimize his mastery of the subtleties, the nuances that make great quarterbacks great, because he's had that on lock for a while now. There isn't anything he can't do. But when I was watching Burrow just slice the Bills defense to ribbons on Sunday, everything just stood out at almost a Hall of Fame level. And what really just sharp relief all through the game, and I was so eager to wake up today and go to the film and see if it matched what I saw on broadcast, and it really did. The pocket movement. Tom Brady is the best pocket mover of all time. You and I have discussed this. The way Burrow was able to navigate the pocket, and, if the rush comes from the side, you move up and you just make the throw. If the rush comes from right at your face, you just hang back and make. It was Brady-esque. That's the highest compliment I can pay. I think as far as the guy, and the Bengals, by the way, to me, have been the AFC's best team for at least the last month, maybe the last 2. Burrow is the primary reason why. If there's one quarterback I'm taking in the NFL, regardless of team right now, I think it's Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I'd love to disagree for debate's sake here, but I don't know how you can after that performance we saw.
Okay, I'll go with Purdy, and you can disagree with me. How about that?
There you go. That's fine. But I mean, I honestly think the conversation in the debate to me would be behind Burrow at 1. For number 2, I think Jalen Hurts has a gripe to be at that same level of Mahomes with the way he has mastered. You want to talk about mastery of an offense? Look at what he's done in Philly and maximize those weapons. I know everybody will talk about how it's the scheme and the weapons, and you've wrote about this before about how that system doesn't work without Jalen Hurts. He is the reason.
The system is Jalen Hurts.
Exactly. They made the whole plan out of him for a reason.
The system is Jalen Hurts, guys.
It really is. It really is. So that's the conversation to me. I think Jalen Hurts should be on that level. But, man, everything you said about Burrow is spot on, right? The physical traits, the mental side of things, everything we heard all week about the offensive line and how they were going to struggle. Obviously, they played really well, but none of that mattered, right? Playoff game on the road, in the snow, the whole game. And Joe Burrow looked like he was tossing the ball in the backyard with like family members on Thanksgiving. He was just cool as could be, never seemed bothered at all, and just went on the field, like you said, just carved him up, dominated a pretty good defense. Again, they've got a pretty good unit in Buffalo, and it didn't matter. None of it did.
He was actually pressured more than people think or the numbers might signify.
Right.
It's just that he handled it so well.
Right. But again, the guy that is that cool, calm, calculated, and effective in those moments, in those elements, that's the guy I want with big games on the line. That's the guy who I'd ride with the rest of the way.
It's you start to think of another Joe Cool, and we're making lofty comparisons here, but he's living up to it.
He is living up to it, and again, he's living up to it in the big games. Like, this is when you live up to it, and what he did on Sunday, again, just the latest chapter of proving he can be that guy. Let's finish up with the obvious, right? Who is going to win this weekend? Who are your picks to win the conference title games, Doug?
I'm kind of going. It's more what I want to see. I want to see Bengals 49ers. We already know. Of course
you do. Old school rematch.
Hell yeah. We already know that Cincinnati defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo has Patrick Mahomes' number. And Anarumo called a brilliant game against the Bills. And they're going to one double Kelsey like they did last time. I don't know if the Chiefs defense is going to have enough answers against what the Bengals are doing on offense now. As for the NFC Championship game, I am going to lean on San Francisco's killer defense, Kyle Shanahan's offensive designs, the positionless football that you can't really defend all the time, although the Eagles have a great defense, to eke out a close win over the Eagles. I think it'll be competitive at the link, for sure. I will be fascinated to see what a fully healthy Jalen Hurts can do to any defense, especially this one, because the thing is, they're so fast. And with the Eagles, they're, the QB run game and the way they sort of let things develop, the kind of deliberate offense against a really quick defense. Sometimes the deliberate offense can knock you on your butt because you're so busy screaming with your hair on fire. And here's one final note. Since week 10, the 49ers rank second in defensive DVOA and they're first in offensive DVOA. They're the best team in football. So there you go.
Yeah, I think in the AFC, Doug, I think all the pressure is on Kansas City here, right? After the consistent losses to Joe Burrow and this Bengals team over and over again. They're at home. They've got the MVP, the assumed MVP, right? I mean, all the pressure's on them not to lose again in this moment. And so when you look at what Mahomes is dealing with the injury, I think that'll obviously play into it. I know if any quarterback is capable of making big plays without being able to use his lower body as much as he's used to, it's the guy with that arm.
He's done it against the Bay. He had 2 explosive passes against the Bengals from the pocket in Week 13, so he can do
that. Right. So, I mean, I'm just not betting against the Bengals right now. Like you said, best team in the AFC by far, maybe for the last half of the season. The NFC game, I think, is going to be a slugfest, man. I love the style of football that both of these two teams play on both sides of the ball. I love the coaching. I love the scheme. I love the playmakers they have on both sides of the ball and how they use them and deploy them. And since a lot of that is kind of even, I think that you could push on just about every area. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks, right? And I'm going to lean on the guy who's got more experience, even going back to his college days in big games. Not that Brock Purdy's not a very experienced college quarterback, but give me the veteran guy. Give me the guy who has been in national championship games and overcome some adversity in the situations he's been through. The guy with the athleticism and again, very similar to Joe Burrow in terms of his demeanor, right? The cool, calm, never shaken by much. I'm going to take, if it comes down to the quarterbacks, I'll take Jalen Hurts at home against a rookie and Brock Purdy on the road here.
What was that Oklahoma-Iowa State game in 2019? It was like 44-41 or something like that. That'd be fun. When Hurts and
Purdy, I don't know if we get 85 points out of this one, but I think it'll be tight, and I think it'll be entertaining as hell.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend, and we're looking forward to it.
We are looking forward to it. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us once again this week on 4 Down Territory. As always, for Doug Farrar, I'm Luke Easterling, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.